All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Good morning and welcome to All Indiana Politics. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Phil is off for today. Let's start with that controversy that erupted this week surrounding the mayor of Zionsville. We've been following it most of the week. Zionsville Mayor Emily Styron expressed her anger after the Texas school shooting, using foul language in online comments as she pushed for gun law reforms in Indiana and around the country. The result? A national discussion about whether she went too far as a public official. But it's a conversation she's not shying away from. And let's welcome in Zionsville Mayor Emily Styron. Mayor, thank you for joining us. Let's begin. Tell us how this conversation got started.
The conversation was started on a Facebook page the morning after the murder of a schoolroom of children in Texas.
And how do you feel now about the way that the conversation between yourself and the gentleman on the Facebook page unfolded?
So I was very angry and frustrated and frankly completely fed up with hearing from anyone online or otherwise all the reasons why we have as a nation failed to keep a schoolroom, a synagogue, a public building safe from gun violence. I'm a mom of three, a mayor of a small town in Indiana, and all I could think of that day was, first of all, just how absolutely, utterly angry I am of the lack of leadership and policy making to address these decades of mass shootings. My oldest child was a 10-year-old when Sandy Hook happened, and my youngest is a 10-year-old today. And thinking about the bookends of my own children and thinking just for the grace of God that we didn't have an event like that at Eagle Elementary here in Zionsville. Imagine what would my response been to people making excuses for why these things happen if this had been the school that my son goes to, that it's right in the middle of our town. I don't think that, I really don't understand more of us aren't calling out people in every conversation who insist that we just can't do anything. It's a mental health problem or something else. I feel like we should all have very strong words around electing policymakers who are going to protect our public buildings, our school children, our public safety officers. This should not be a conversation around profanity. It should be a conversation around how are we as a state and local communities going to make our schools more safe?
What to you represents the ideal solution? What to you are common sense gun control measures?
Well, first of all, I would look at public safety folks to help craft some of those measures. And if you recall, the state police chief asked the Indiana legislature to please institute some sort of gun control measures, including licensing gun owners. Seems like a very clear that's a very clear message taken from someone that should be one of the leaders in terms of talking about this. I also think about voting as being a right that is enshrined in the Constitution. And as a voter, you and I have to register. We have to, in some cases, if we vote in a primary, we have to tell what party we are in. I think that, there's, when you actually get to the election ballot, you have to show ID to prove that you are who you are. There's a lot of structure involved in exercising your right to vote. If you drive a car, you have to have insurance in order to get a license to drive. You have to have proven that you know how to drive, that you've taken training at some point in terms of getting your first driver's license. You also are arrested and held liable for breaking rules that are instituted on our public roadways in order for using your car. So there's structure around exercising rights and privileges that we have as Americans. And I believe that there are lots of folks who have identified some of those structures. And I'd just like us to see policymakers get together and really work on implementing some of those. I'm sure that, the things that President Biden has outlined are a great starting point. And that's what any elected official, any leader really does, is they start off setting a bar and creating a conversation and opening a table for discussion so that all of those policymakers that can be involved in that process can play a role in shaping what's ultimately determined to be the right fit for our country.
What comes next for you? What role do you see yourself playing as the mayor of a city in Indianapolis, or in Indiana, both in terms of the policies that are implemented on the streets of your own town and on the political level?
Well, as mayor, I will absolutely support lawmakers and legislators who are strengthening our gun regulation laws so that they mirror things that other advocates in other communities and other policymakers are indicating could help us reduce the level of gun violence that happens in our country. I don't see, from my perspective, I'm not a legislator. I am not a state policymaker. I am an executive in a wonderful, fabulous community in the state of Indiana. And my job is to ensure that we uphold the laws that are made by legislators outside of our purview. And that is what I am. That's why I am happy that I have an opportunity to ask our legislators to go forward and be brave and be accountable and be the folks that so many of us want them to be in terms of putting together common sense gun laws.
Zionsville Mayor Emily Styron, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And coming up, we'll take a look at what the president had to say about guns last week, and we will bring in our expert panel to discuss. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. We want to talk more about the push to change the country's gun laws. President Biden went on national television Thursday night to drum up support for a series of changes he wants passed. The package follows a series of deadly mass shootings in Texas, in Buffalo, New York, in California, and in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Among the president's proposals, ban the sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, passing a national red flag law, and ending legal protection for gun manufacturers.
My fellow Americans, enough. Enough. It's time for each of us to do our part. It's time to act. For the children we've lost, for the children we can save, for the nation we love. Let's hear the call and the cry. Let's meet the moment. Let us finally do something.
So let's welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Allie Bartlett and Democrat Drew Anderson. Allie, we'll start with you. The president says, enough, let's get something done on guns. Your reaction to what he said Thursday night, why not consider bans on military-style rifles and high-capacity magazines?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's start there. I mean, first and foremost, I know that the president mentioned red flag laws, which we already have on the books here in Indiana. And so I think we can use an example from right here at home as to why over legislating this issue is not the answer, and it's not what's going to help us have a tangible change. Just like we saw in the case of the FedEx mass shooting here in Indianapolis, Prosecutor Ryan Mears took no action on the red flag reports that were on his desk for weeks and weeks. He could have, possibly prevented that from happening if those laws had been enforced by our prosecutor. It doesn't help to over legislate something when the laws that are in place are not being enforced, they're not being followed. And so I'm not sure why additional legislation that would, possibly be infringing on constitutional rights would be the answer here. When there's already laws in place, they're not being followed, they're not being enforced by a prosecutor.
Drew, Democrats have been pushing for these same limits after every mass shooting. Is there really anything you can convince enough Republicans to join the cause?
I think at the end of the day, what Democrats could do is speak up, because we're speaking up. Folks like Zionsville Mayor Emily Styron speak up because we're tired of our kids dying. We're tired of our children being shot. And a majority of folks are behind gun safety legislation, like background checks, like safe storage laws, like increasing the age to 18 to 21. And those simple safety requirements can help us actually protect our children's lives. And to address your point, Garrett, the Republicans have shown time and again, like Todd Young, they prefer the gun lobby and their money, their campaign money, over actually delivering. And that's the problem that we have right now today. Republicans put their money before our children's lives.
Allie, I'll let you respond to that.
Yeah, we have laws on the books here in Indiana that were not enforced by a Democrat prosecutor. So I don't know how you can make that statement. And secondly, to address the Zionsville mayor's comments like that and rhetoric like that just create aggression and do not do anything productive to facilitate the conversation are not helpful. All it is just aggressive rhetoric that does nothing to move the ball forward. We are all upset about this. It was a complete tragedy. When we have laws in the books here in Indiana that aren't being enforced by prosecutors, we have a bigger problem there. Let's get to the root of the problem and let's figure out how to enforce the laws that we already have before creating more. Over legislating
I want to get in on that
when our current laws aren't being enforced by our prosecutor.
Drew, I
want to get in on that real quick. Allie, you're slamming rhetoric. Talk to your own party. Jim Banks does aggressive rhetoric. Todd Rokita does aggressive rhetoric. Your former president does aggressive rhetoric. Let me finish, please. Let me finish. Your party does aggressive rhetoric, and you guys say nothing. And then speaking of red flag laws, your former Vice President, Mike Pence, wants to do away with red flag laws. So you're contradicting yourself.
But we're not talking about him. We're talking about the fact that in Indiana, there are red flag laws on the
Allie
books.
and Drew, I do want to move on and drill down a little bit deeper into this rhetoric issue. We brought up the Zionsville mayor. Drew, capturing some of that, almost what you would characterize as the angry suburban mother demographic, could that be a winning strategy for November?
It is, because the reason why Styron spoke up, because she's a mother. When she saw what happened to children in Texas, she saw what happened to children in Sandy Hook 10 years ago. Mothers and fathers and families woke up after Texas and they thought about their kids. And of course she was upset. I'm upset because my nephews could be victims the next time the mass shooting happens. We're all angry, and that's what's going to drive voters to actually support folks that support gun safety legislation, because it needs to get done.
Allie, we got about 30 seconds left in this segment. How is what she said any different from what we've seen from Trump supporters for the past 6 years?
I mean, what she said was angry and divisive and counterproductive. I
Your
mean, if
party
we want
does
to
it.
get to a real solution here, we need to have a calm, logical conversation about what needs to happen. And first and foremost, everyone's angry, everyone's upset, everyone wants to see tangible results coming out of this. But if we are not enforcing the laws that we have on our books, if we are not training and supporting our police and our first responders and our teachers and everyone else, then what progress can be made? If we're not enforcing the current laws, why would we make more laws? That makes no sense, and I haven't heard
Talk to your leaders.
Drew and Allie, stay with us. We'll be
criticize.
back in just a moment. Up next, we'll talk surging gas prices and inflation in Indiana and what state leaders should and should not do about it. That's next on All Indiana Politics. Welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back Republican Allie Bartlett and Democrat Drew Anderson. Let's talk about gas prices now. Indiana saw the second largest jump in gas prices this week in the United States, topped only by Michigan. It's almost certainly we'll see a $5 per gallon average in the next few weeks. Governor Holcomb told News 8 again this past week he is not considering suspending the state's taxes on gasoline. So, Allie, let's start with you. If it's not taxes on gasoline, what should the governor be doing to give inflation relief?
Yeah, so the talking point about suspending the gas tax, first and foremost, I do believe that taking that step is not the correct step to take here. Obviously, inflation is going to continue to rise. We've seen that. So we need to have a logical response to that instead of a quick, hasty reaction that could impact our state's economic certainty for years to come. What could be done is that we can take a look at other tax reductions and other tax relief for Hoosiers going forward, which I think is exactly what he and the legislative leaders intend to do.
Drew, I'll let you jump in on this as well.
I mean, government leaders can walk and chew gum at the same time, do short-term and long-term solutions. And the short-term solution is pausing the state's gas tax to give temporary relief to Hoosier motorists. 70 cents could be chopped off this gas price right now for Hoosiers, but Republicans say no. To make up for that revenue, we could use surplus dollars or American Rescue Plan dollars that's left over. Republicans are saying no. There is a short-term solution. Democrats are providing it. We are going out and talking about it, and it can happen, but Republicans are saying no.
Yeah, we're saying no because a short-term solution could mean long-term impacts on the financial stability of our state.
No, don't do no, Allie, $6 billion surplus, we can fund it.
And we have
American
that
Rescue Plan dollars, American Rescue Plan dollars is left over. We can fund it. You guys are saying no because you guys are stuck on your fiscal partisanship that everyday families do not care about.
Let me jump in
right
here
now.
for just a moment. Do either of you think we will see this plan coming out soon, as in this week?
A plan from Governor Holcomb?
Yes.
I think we're going to see traction on development of a plan. I think that what they're doing is they're having to give some logical thought to next steps, including consulting with legislative leaders and determining what the best outcomes are going to be here and when those things can be implemented just under, laws and regulations in the state.
Allie said the key point right there.
When we can do what?
Allie said the key point right there, consulting with their consultants for election year gimmicks. They do not have a plan for Indiana's future, and you can look at all the statistics with our economy where we have the worst workforce one of the worst workforces in the nation, horrible quality of life. They try to spin everything as great here, but they're refusing to act on anything, and this is another example.
We've created an economy.
Drew and Allie, I do want to touch on one other topic here. One more question. On Friday, the Indiana Supreme Court ruled in favor of Governor Holcomb and against the legislature and Attorney General Todd Rokita in the emergency powers case. This is for both of you. Was this lawsuit worth it? Allie, we'll start with you.
I mean, I think it's always worth it to take a look at constitutional law and be able to answer a question. If there is a question of constitutional law that needs to be interpreted by the court, that's what the Supreme Court of Indiana is there for. I don't think it was wasteful. I think it gave us some clarity and so that the legislature and the executive branch can make decisions on that basis moving forward.
Drew, we'll give you the last word on this one.
I mean, like literally every session, the Republicans do something that's unpopular. It makes no sense and it wastes taxpayer dollars. This is another example. It's going to happen again every year because the Republicans literally have no agenda but a partisan one.
Yeah. Well, I guess one final follow-up before we go. Is this an election-related move, Holcomb v. Rokita here?
Absolutely not. No. I think we're answering the question of constitutional law. We're figuring out how we can proceed, and on that basis, we will move forward, and that's it.
All right.
No, it's not, but one last thing. I know we're about to cut off. Happy Pride, everyone. Celebrate you.
All right. We'll leave that here. Thank you so much. We'll be back in a moment.
Take care.
Take All Indiana Politics on the go with you. Download our podcast now. Part of the All Indiana Podcast Network and allindianapodcastnetwork.com.
Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. And you can also find our brand new All Indiana Politics podcast. It's part of the All Indiana Politics podcast, or All Indiana Podcast Network at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.